Charles has since made a ruling against his son potentially returning to royal duty.
The decision was not announced. It did not require a statement, a signature ceremony, or a press release. According to palace insiders, King Charles III authorized a subtle but consequential shift that altered the balance of power inside the royal system. No confrontation, no warning. Just a recalibration that took effect quietly and immediately. For Prince Harry, those familiar with the reaction describe something close to panic. Not public outrage, but the sudden realization that a door he assumed remained open had, in practice, been closed. This is the story of how quiet decisions carry the loudest consequences, and why silence from the throne can change everything.
Us is a 9 Honey royal reporter, Natalie Oliveri. Nat, great to see you as always. So the King declared that Harry cannot be half in, half out. What exactly does that mean, and what brought on this response?
Well, look, the King is appearing to follow the decision of the late Queen Elizabeth.
The first sign was absence, not action. A meeting that did not happen. A call that was not returned. According to palace insiders, King Charles III approved a procedural adjustment so routine it required no memo, and so decisive it required no explanation. The monarchy did not change its tone, it changed its access. In royal systems, access is everything. It determines who is consulted, who is briefed, and who is kept in the loop. The decision Charles authorized did not revoke titles or issue reprimands. It quietly reclassified who required consultation and who did not. That distinction, insiders say, is where power actually lives. For months, aides had noticed a recalibration underway. Invitations tightened, briefings narrowed. Information that once flowed informally now stopped at institutional boundaries. None of this was framed as punishment. It was framed as efficiency, modernization, streamlining, words that signal progress while delivering finality. The absence of an announcement was deliberate. Royal authority is most effective when it appears natural rather than reactive. Charles did not want a moment. He wanted a condition. Something that exists without explanation, and therefore resists challenge.
Us is a 9 Honey royal reporter, Natalie Oliveri. Nat, great to see you as always. So the King declared that Harry cannot be half in, half out.
Correspondents familiar with palace rhythm noticed the shift almost immediately. Names disappeared from schedules. Courtesy updates ended. Conversations once handled quietly were redirected through formal channels or not at all. It was not dramatic. It was unmistakable. For Prince Harry, the realization arrived slowly and then all at once. According to those close to him, he initially assumed a delay, then a misunderstanding, then a temporary freeze. Only later did the pattern become clear. This was not a pause. It was a redefinition. Harry had lived with conflict before. Public disagreements, legal disputes, media battles. What unsettled him this time was the absence of conflict altogether. There was nothing to argue against. No statement to rebut, no decision to appeal. The system had simply moved on without him. Insiders say Charles's approach was informed by a single principle. Institutions endure by reducing friction, not escalating it. By declining to engage, the monarchy avoided creating a new chapter. It closed an old one instead.
Response.
Well, look, the King is appearing to follow the decision of the late Queen Elizabeth II that working members of the family cannot earn their own money.
The decision itself was narrow. It concerned consultation, not kinship. But in royal terms, consultation is recognition. Being consulted affirms relevance. Removing it signals the conclusion. Charles did not need to say anything because the message was embedded in the process. What made the moment especially destabilizing for Harry was the timing. He had believed that despite distance, lines of communication remained open. That belief shaped his sense of leverage. The quiet decision erased that assumption without confrontation. According to palace aides, Charles viewed the move as necessary housekeeping. The monarchy, under his reign, would operate with clarity about roles. Those outside the working structure would not be treated as internal stakeholders. This was not personal, it was organizational. Harry experienced it as both. Attempts to seek clarification met with politeness and procedure. There was no hostility, there was no warmth. Requests were acknowledged and redirected. The tone was calm. The effect was chilling. Panic, insiders say, set in not because of what was said, but because nothing was. The monarchy has long mastered the art of silent authority. By withholding engagement, it denies the other party a platform. There is no argument to win, no grievance to escalate, only acceptance or exhaustion. Charles's decision also reflected his understanding of legacy. He has spoken often about reducing noise and restoring focus. Quiet decisions serve that goal. They do not feed cycles, they end them. For Harry, the implications were immediate. Without access, his ability to influence or even understand internal thinking vanished. The door he assumed remained ajar had been closed so gently he did not hear it latch. Observers note that this was not retaliation. It was boundary setting at the highest level. Charles did not punish dissent. He organized around it. By defining who belonged to the operational monarchy, he eliminated ambiguity. The absence of an announcement also protected the institution. There was no headline to contest, no public feud to inflame. The monarchy remained above the fray while its internal reality shifted decisively. Harry's reaction, described by those close to him, was not rage but alarm. He understood immediately what this meant. Once access is removed, restoration is rare. Institutions rarely reverse quiet decisions because doing so admits they were decisions in the first place. The moment forced Harry to confront a new reality. The monarchy was no longer a space he could re-enter through negotiation or explanation. It had become a structure that functioned without him by design. Charles's silence was not indifference. It was a resolution. And in that silence, everything Harry believed was still possible suddenly was not. What makes the monarchy formidable is not its ability to confront, but its ability to withdraw. Power inside the royal system is rarely exercised through direct refusal. It is exercised through recalibration. According to palace veterans, King Charles III understands this instinctively. His authority does not announce itself. It reorganizes the environment until resistance becomes irrelevant. In practical terms, closing a door at the palace does not involve saying no. It involves changing who must be informed, who is looped in, who is consulted before decisions are finalized. These are administrative shifts, but they carry symbolic weight. Once a person is no longer part of the consultative process, their influence ends without argument. Insiders explain that this method is preferred precisely because it avoids escalation. There is no dispute to inflame, no grievance to manage. The absence of engagement becomes the message. In royal culture, silence is not emptiness. It is an authority. The distinction between access and inclusion is critical. Access can be granted temporarily. Inclusion is structural. When Charles quietly adjusted that structure, he did not revoke anything that could be contested publicly. He simply clarified who the working monarchy consists of and who stands outside it. For Prince Harry, this distinction landed hard. Harry had assumed that, even without a formal role, familial status would preserve informal access. That assumption proved outdated. Under Charles's reign, operational clarity overrides sentiment. Royal aides describe the philosophy as no dual tracks. There would be no parallel channels, no informal influence running alongside formal exclusion. If someone was outside the working structure, they were entirely outside it. That clarity, while cold, prevents ambiguity from becoming leverage. Historically, the monarchy has used this approach sparingly but decisively. Figures who drifted from the institution were not confronted. They were deprioritized. Over time, relevance faded without drama. Charles's decision closely followed that precedent. What changed under his leadership was the speed. In previous eras, recalibration unfolded slowly, almost imperceptibly. This time, the adjustment was swift, not reactive, but timely. Charles moved before confusion could harden into expectation. The palace's silence reinforced the finality. No briefing was issued to explain the shift because explanation invites debate. Debate invites negotiation. Negotiation invites reversal. Charles wanted none of that. The decision was designed to be irreversible precisely because it was never framed as a decision. Correspondents who track institutional behavior noted that this was classic Charles. He favors systems over personalities, continuity over conflict. Where others might seek resolution through dialogue, he seeks resolution through structure. This approach also insulated the monarchy from future pressure. Once access is removed, attempts to regain it appear self-interested rather than justified. Any outreach from Harry could be framed as personal rather than institutional, reducing its effectiveness. The emotional cost of this strategy is not ignored internally. Palace aides acknowledge that it can feel brutal, but they also emphasize that clarity prevents long-term instability. Ambiguity creates hope. Hope creates tension. Tension creates headlines. Silence creates closure. For Harry, the door-closing mechanism was especially destabilizing because it offered no language to push against. There was no accusation to refute, no grievance to correct. The system had simply reorganized without him. Attempts to interpret the shift through familiar lenses failed. This was not punishment. It was not retaliation. It was governance. Charles was not responding to Harry's actions. He was defining the monarchy's future. That future, insiders say, does not accommodate informal influence from outside the working core. Charles's reign is built around consolidation, fewer voices, clearer roles, reduced noise. The decision affecting Harry aligned with that vision.
Is, with the royal family or away from it, but apparently the king has said, no, you cannot be a half-in, half-out member of this family. It's either one or the other. But
the monarchy's ability to close doors quietly is what makes reopening them so rare. Once silence replaces engagement, momentum disappears. There is nothing to argue with, nothing to appeal to. Time does the rest. Harry's panic, according to those close to him, stemmed from recognizing this reality. He was not being rejected emotionally. He was being removed structurally. Emotional appeals do not restore structural access. This realization marked a shift in his understanding of his place within the institution. The monarchy he knew, one that tolerated ambiguity and informal influence, no longer existed. Charles had replaced it with something leaner and less forgiving. The door did not slam, it simply ceased to open. And in the monarchy, that is how decisions become permanent. The first reaction was confusion, then urgency, then something closer to fear. According to people familiar with his state of mind, Prince Harry did not immediately grasp the scale of what had changed. He sensed distance, but distance had been part of his reality for years. What unsettled him was the quality of it. This was not emotional distance, it was procedural. Harry began asking questions in the only way he knew how. Indirectly at first, a request for clarification here, a check-in there. The replies were polite, brief, and immovable. Nothing was refused outright. Nothing was offered either. The tone communicated closure without confrontation. Those close to him say the realization arrived gradually. The monarchy had not reacted to him. It had reorganized around him. That distinction mattered because it removed agency. You can respond to the reaction. You cannot argue with reorganization. Harry's panic and insiders' stress did not look like a public outburst or private rage. It looked like acceleration. He moved faster. He sought information more insistently. He pressed advisors for insight into palace thinking. Each attempt produced the same result: calm deflection. The calm was what alarmed him most. For years, conflict had at least provided visibility. Arguments produce statements. Statements create leverage. This time, there was nothing to push against. The absence of language made interpretation difficult, and resistance impossible. Those familiar with Harry's psychology describe a deep-seated fear of being erased rather than opposed. His life has been shaped by visibility, both unwanted and unavoidable. The idea that he could simply be excluded without explanation struck at something primal. Being ignored is more destabilizing than being criticized. As days passed, Harry's questions became more focused. Was this temporary? Was it specific to a single issue? Was it reversible? Each question assumed the possibility of negotiation. The answers, when they came at all, assumed none. The shift also altered how Harry understood his relationship with his father. King Charles III had always communicated through tone as much as words. This time, the tone was unmistakable. There would be no mediation, no personal intervention. The role of father had yielded to the role of sovereign. That transition cut deeply. Harry had believed that familial bonds would always provide a back channel. That belief had sustained him through years of distance. The quiet decision dismantled it. Insiders say Harry oscillated between disbelief and resolve. Part of him wanted to challenge the shift, to force clarification. Another part recognized the danger of escalation. Pressing too hard could confirm the very rationale behind the decision. Institutions withdraw further when pressured. Advisors urged caution. They explained what palace veterans already knew. Once access is removed, attempts to regain it can entrench exclusion. Silence, painful as it is, preserves the possibility of future recalibration. Speaking risks finality. Harry struggled with that advice because silence felt like surrender. His instinct has always been to confront, to explain, to correct. In this case, those instincts worked against him. The panic intensified when practical consequences became visible. Information he once received indirectly no longer arrived. Decisions were announced without prior notice. Events unfolded without consultation. Each omission reinforced the message. He was no longer part of the process. Friends describe moments of acute anxiety, not about status or privilege, but about relevance. Harry feared becoming a footnote in a story he once inhabited. The monarchy was moving forward without him, and it was doing so efficiently. This realization reshaped his sense of leverage. Media attention, once a counterweight, now felt insufficient. Public sympathy does not restore institutional access. Legal arguments do not reopen administrative doors. The tools he had relied on in past disputes suddenly seemed blunt. Harry's relationship with advisors also shifted. He demanded certainty where none could be offered. He asked for timelines, probabilities, and strategies. They offered caution and patience. The mismatch heightened frustration. The panic did not dissipate quickly because there was nothing to resolve. The situation was stable precisely because it was closed. Stability, in this context, was the enemy. It meant the decision was holding. Observers note that this phase marked a turning point in Harry's understanding of power. Power, he realized, does not need to explain itself. It simply rearranges conditions until resistance loses meaning. The emotional toll was compounded by isolation. Without palace engagement, Harry had no internal feedback. Everything he knew came from inference. Inference breeds anxiety. Each silence became a canvas for fear. At the same time, Harry was acutely aware that any public response could worsen his position. Speaking out would confirm separation. Remaining silent preserved ambiguity. The dilemma was paralyzing. Insiders describe a man caught between identity and strategy. Identity urged him to assert himself, to demand acknowledgement. Strategy urged restraint. The tension between the two produced sleeplessness and agitation. The absence of spectacle did not reduce the stakes. It raised them. This was not a battle that could be won with rhetoric. It was a structural shift that required acceptance or long-term adaptation. Harry began to confront a reality he had long resisted. The monarchy he left was not static. It could change in ways that made a return impossible. His past presence did not guarantee future relevance. That realization fueled panic because it closed a psychological door he had kept ajar. Even as he built a life elsewhere, part of him believed the option of reintegration remained. Charles's quiet decision challenged that belief. Friends say Harry did not collapse under the weight of this understanding. He recalibrated, slowly, painfully. The panic gave way to grim clarity. The institution had chosen order over reconciliation, silence over negotiation. This phase did not end with resolution. It ended with recognition. Recognition that power exercised quietly is the least likely to be reversed. Recognition that access, once withdrawn, is rarely restored through argument. Harry emerged from this period altered, more cautious, more aware of limits, less certain of his ability to influence outcomes beyond his immediate sphere. The door had not been slammed, it had been removed from the frame. And that, more than any public dispute, changed everything he thought he knew about where he stood. What makes the decision irreversible is not its substance, but its method. King Charles III did not declare a boundary, he embedded one. By shifting process rather than posture, he transformed a family rift into an administrative fact. Facts endure where emotions fade.
Carrying out more public engagements, but these we understand are going to be away from the royal family, so he does not overshadow the King's events and also Prince William's event.
In monarchies, permanence is achieved through routine. When a new routine takes hold, it becomes invisible. People stop noticing the absence because it is no longer framed as a loss. It is simply how things work. That is why the quiet decision mattered more than any public rebuke could have. It replaced a relationship defined by negotiation with a structure defined by exclusion. For Prince Harry, the implications are sweeping. The path back is no longer blocked by disagreement, which can be resolved, but by organization, which rarely is. You can apologize for words. You cannot apologize your way back into a system that no longer requires your input. This changes the calculus of everything that follows. Media pressure loses its leverage. Public sympathy loses its traction. Even time, often a healer, becomes neutral at best. Institutions age differently from relationships. They do not soften, they settle. Charles's decision also clarifies the monarchy's future posture. It signals that the era of informal influence is over. No parallel lanes, no back channels. The working institution will be lean, disciplined, and insulated from external pressure. That clarity reassures insiders by reducing uncertainty. It unsettles outsiders because it eliminates hope. Hope is the hidden variable in royal disputes. As long as hope exists, stories persist. Commentators speculate. Negotiations are imagined. When hope disappears, narratives collapse into acceptance. Charles's silence extinguished hope without confrontation. The permanence of this shift reshapes Harry's role in ways that go beyond titles or appearances. It reframes him as external to the monarchy's operational life. Not hostile, not adversarial, simply outside. That distinction carries consequences that accumulate quietly over time. Invitations become symbolic rather than substantive. Updates become public rather than private. Decisions arrive fully formed rather than in draft. Each small change reinforces the larger truth. The institution no longer anticipates Harry's reaction because it no longer factors into outcomes. This also alters the dynamic between Harry and public perception. For years, his proximity to the monarchy gave his statements gravity. Distance does not remove that entirely, but it changes its nature. Commentary becomes commentary, not insight. Advocacy becomes opinion, not influence. The shift affects how future conflicts will be interpreted. Without access, any disagreement appears one-sided. The palace does not need to respond because it is not engaged. Silence reads as authority when it is backed by structure. Charles's approach reflects a broader understanding of modern power. Visibility is not control. Attention is not leverage. Stability comes from predictability, not persuasion. By reorganizing quietly, he achieved stability without inviting debate. For Harry, adapting to this reality requires a redefinition of identity. For much of his life, his sense of self was intertwined with proximity to the institution, even in rebellion. The quiet decision severed that tie administratively. Emotionally, the severing takes longer. Insiders say this is where panic gave way to recalibration, not acceptance but adjustment. Harry began to understand that the question was no longer how to respond to the monarchy, but how to operate without it as a reference point. That is a profound shift. The consequences extend into practical life as well. Without internal access, Harry's understanding of royal timelines, intentions, and priorities becomes speculative. Planning around unknowns introduces friction. Certainty disappears. Observers note that this may be Charles's most consequential act as monarch so far, precisely because it avoided spectacle. Spectacle invites reversal. Quiet decisions harden into precedent. Precedent matters because it outlasts personalities. Even if relationships thaw, structures remain. Future advisors will inherit the new normal. They will not know the old one. Restoration would require conscious effort rather than a default habit. That is why reversal is unlikely. To reopen access would require acknowledging that access had been closed. Doing so would undermine the very authority Charles sought to assert. Institutions rarely undo quiet decisions because doing so reveals them. The monarchy's confidence in this moment stems from its understanding of time. It can wait. It always does. Individuals feel a sense of urgency because their lives move faster. Institutions measure decades. Harry's challenge is learning to operate on individual time without an institutional anchor. That learning is ongoing. It involves grief as much as strategy. Grief for a role that ended without ceremony. Grief for a connection that was assumed rather than guaranteed. Yet there is also clarity in finality. Ambiguity prolongs pain. Closure, even harsh closure, allows adaptation. Charles provided closure through silence. Harry now adapts within its limits. The broader lesson of this episode is uncomfortable but clear. Power does not need to explain itself to be effective. It needs only to reorganize reality. Once reality changes, explanations become irrelevant. For the monarchy, the quiet decision restored order. For Harry, it removed a psychological safety net. Both outcomes were achieved without a single public word. This is why the decision changes everything. It replaces conflict with a conclusion. It transforms debate into structure. It moves the story from negotiation to aftermath. What follows will not be dramatic. It will be incremental, the kind of change that becomes visible only when you look back and realize how much has shifted without announcement. Harry will continue forward, building meaning elsewhere. The monarchy will continue forward, streamlined and unencumbered. Their paths may cross ceremonially, but they will not intertwine operationally. That is the finality Charles delivered without speaking. And in the monarchy, silence that endures is the loudest verdict of all. Power rarely announces itself. It moves quietly and leaves consequences in its wake. If you want a careful, grounded analysis of how royal decisions reshape lives without headlines, subscribe, share your perspective, and stay with us as we follow what silence from the throne truly means.